Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Robert Uttaro. Robert, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's very much my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I am a rape crisis counselor, public educator. I try my best to help people affected by sexual trauma, sexual violence in any way I can. So that can be direct counseling, that can be working with family members, it can be leading trainings and workshops, educating students and parents, and trying my best to help in any way I can, depending on what the need might be. So depending on whatever someone might be struggling with or hurting by, trying to be a bridge to help them get the help they need in whatever that could look like for them.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. And I think it's a very important topic, well worth discussing. In terms of how people are first introduced to you, from a day-to-day basis, what does that look like for you?
It can vary, and it doesn't have to be every day as well. So I can just even interacting with you is a blessing to me, and being able to have this conversation. It can be a student can have disclose something, and school administration can contact me. When I first began this, I was volunteering as part of a nonprofit organization, and so I'd be simply helping with whatever calls or clients came my way, and where they thought I could be helpful. Um, and there were many times when they wouldn't even have me interact with people as well. So yeah, it can come online, it can come through my phone, it can come in person. I could be out at a party somewhere with people and having a couple drinks, and someone can disclose to me. So it's not a daily thing, but it's a daily thing in the sense that it can happen anytime, if that makes sense.
And to be as sort of impartial as you can be, would you consider anyone who experiences, sexual abuse or assault, do you recommend that they do some form of therapy, even if it's just perhaps in the short term?
I would never deny therapy, but I think it's important for people to seek out help and to seek assistance. And for some people, that is a therapist, and hopefully, and there are different therapeutic practices, different things that are helpful therapeutically. And one is seeing a therapist, and one could also there could be therapy through music or therapy through body work. And so, yes, I definitely value and would recommend people seek that out for themselves.
Okay. Well, and when we exchanged messages initially, I thought it was a very important topic to talk about. And I think that having sort of a public conversation, I think the best way for me to be able to bring value to the people listening is perhaps a picking your brains on how you go about that process of helping someone when they're at their potentially one of the lowest moments of their life, perhaps. So, and if it happens to them or if it happens to a loved one, maybe this conversation might help in that process so that they're prepared. Because speaking about these difficult life moments, there is a wrong way to go about doing it. And if you don't have any, shall we say, knowledge or education, it's very easy to go about it the wrong way. So you're introduced to someone who's just had one of the most, probably the worst thing that's ever happened to them. What's the first thing that you do?
I listen. I be with them and I listen to them. And I don't talk that much. I don't make them do anything. I try my best to meet them where they're at. And you're absolutely right. Countless people throughout the world, this is oftentimes the worst thing that has happened to them. And so by believing them and listening to them can save a life, and it can really start a pathway of healing. And you said it too, if we don't do that, if we respond poorly, if we don't believe them, if we blame them, if we judge them, if we ask certain kind of prying questions, we can really lead a person down a path of destruction who is already a traumatized individual. So the first thing I do is simply listen and just try to be with them where they're at. And sometimes that's just sitting with them in silence.
I have heard it in some therapeutic approaches that just that act of listening is sometimes enough to help a person just in and of itself, just having someone that will listen to you. Is there a point at which you start thinking they might be ready for the next part in the process of your approach? And if so, what is that?
Hmm. It depends on what they need. So if someone is truly considering reporting to the police, that's a different question than someone that is trying to get away from their husband, or someone that is just having flashbacks, or someone that has repressed these memories for many, many years, and then they hear of something, and then all of a sudden they get flooded with memories and experiences. So it really depends. And that's part of the reason listening is so important. So what someone might need today might be different than what they need later that night. And it might be different what they need in a month or in, 3 years down the road. So really, I don't think I make anyone do anything. I don't force them to do anything. I can present them with options. I can ask them questions. I can see what they're interested in. Some people at one moment in time would never tell another soul they wouldn't go to therapy. Sometimes people really feel most comfortable with me. They might never want to speak to me. They feel comfortable maybe with you, or they feel comfortable with someone else. And they couldn't imagine telling someone else their story. They can't imagine saying this again. But in time, it can build up to, as you say, a therapist. It can build up to seeking questions of their own work, life, faith, the different avenues they may take. So um, yeah, I hope that answers your question, but it really varies and it really depends on what they're going with it at the time.
Yeah, I should have expected it to be situational or conditional based on who you're talking to. Is
Mm.
there any point at which you try and establish a goal for them, or is that sort of a bit later on down the line in terms of what it is that they want to get out of it, or what would potentially make them feel like they're recovering?
It's an interesting question. I don't pose it to them as a goal per se, but my goal is always to keep someone alive. So as long as someone doesn't kill themselves and they stay on this earth, that there's always a chance. There's a chance that they can grow, heal, that they can get through this. And part of my work is trying to provide hope and let people know that they really can get through this. Um, so I don't give a goal, but it can in time. That could be seeing a therapist. Wow, it's interesting that there's so many people. Maybe all of us as human beings, maybe we don't often see ourselves how other people might see us. And so, or maybe we have moments where we really don't understand. So I'm able to show someone after 5 years, look where you were and look where you are now. And that's something special that they don't see. They might think, I can't believe I haven't got over this yet. I can't believe I'm still having a memory. I can't believe I'm still affected by this. I can't believe I'm still depressed. And I say, no, no, it's okay. And look where you've come all this time. And that can help them. It puts some things into perspective.
You actually mentioned something which is totally what I would expect to happen in this scenario is sort of the memories reoccurring and presenting themselves while doing normal things, or suddenly it interrupts you and you have that memory again. Or it's like almost lifelike. Is there any approaches that you have to dealing with thoughts that you either wouldn't want or are trying to get over?
It's part of the challenge of this work. I believe we live in a world actually of truth and lies. And so many things come at people. And I'm trying my best to combat the lies that they're listening to, hearing, believing in, and seeing with the truth. So one of that is simply, okay, yes, you're getting memories. Yes, you're getting flashbacks. Yes, you're having nightmares. And yes, it's happening to you. That is all true. But that's not happening to you now. I remember once being trained by just these amazing women. And one woman taught me, just when someone could be going through PTSD, to grab something, grab a desk, hit the desk and say, this is a desk. You know what I mean? I'm not in war. I'm not a child right now being abused. I'm not in that space. I'm actually here at a desk. And I found that quite powerful. And I try my best to keep people in reality when I can, because it is very easy to go down a path of untruths and pain and misery. but it's because of things that have happened to them. It's so trying to really combat those things and let them know that no, look, you have children, you're a successful person, you have a job, you have all these good things in your life. They just might not be seeing it at that time. So trying to help them see that and have them grasp it and hold it and embrace it.
Yeah, sort of reminds me of an anchor to keep you present. And
Mm,
yes, it's great advice and something that people can literally physically do.
mm,
In one of your previous answers, you mentioned about the looking at where you are versus where you were, and I think you gave the
mm.
time period of like 5 years. Is there an average time frame that you would actually give to someone who, when can I expect to get better, and how long does that take?
I can't. I don't know. There are people. I say there's no timetable on this, and so you asked earlier about goals. One of my goals for myself, for people, is that they don't have their perpetrator control their lives, that they don't have the pain of these crimes control and cripple their lives and just completely destroy them. That's always a goal I have, other than keeping people alive if I can. So I try to help them know there's no timetable. So I really can't say. There are some people that, many people, if again, if not all of us, at one moment in time or consistently wear masks and we can present ourselves in a certain way that we're really not inside or not feeling inside. And so people can be victimized and victim of a crime. And a day later, a week later, they can act like nothing ever happened to them and they can go on years and as if nothing happened. But in reality, inside, they might be suffering and their spouse might not know, their family might not know, their, coworkers most likely don't know. And other people genuinely repress memories, could be from childhood, and 30 years later they might get a flashback. So one really crazy thing about this crime is the amount of damage it causes over time. The significant damage it can cause over time is something that still really gets me, that people can still be affected even when they are in a healthy marriage, even if they're successful and they're actually happy in their life, that they can still be affected from a news article, a comment someone says, a smell, a song, and it can just send them right back down real fast. And so that's why it's so important to try to meet them where they're at.
Well, that actually gives me a segue in a way because I am talking about sort of how we can, or you make things better for people, maybe make their life better. But what does better actually look like in terms of if you could take someone that a person who's been referred to you, if you could take the ideal scenario for them, magic wand, what would it actually look like in terms of like the perfect recovery?
Hmm. The perfect recovery with the magic wand would be that they're not controlled by the actions of another and that they don't blame themselves for the actions of another, and that it ultimately doesn't control and cripple. It doesn't mean that it can't affect their lives. I know many people have been raped. I know many people have been sexually abused who have actually said that they wouldn't change it. They wouldn't take it away because it's actually made them who they are. It's part of their life. It's part of their experience. And part of the healing process for people is that some people go on to become advocates. They go on to share stories. They go on to tell their story and empower and educate and help in the healing process of other people. And those are people that I would argue are not being controlled and dictated by the actions of another. When I see someone who can't sleep or can't accept that they're worthy of anything because of someone that truly doesn't care about them, wants nothing to do with them, and actually took pleasure in hurting them, they are being controlled and crippled. And it is incredibly sad. I don't even know if we have human words to truly describe what that's like. So yeah, my magic wand, I guess, would be to have them just not be controlled and they can just live their life, make their choices, and just not have them, as you say, an anchor. It weighs people down.
Hmm.
I really like actually what you said about the anchor, that you can hold on to something. There's an anchor you can have for good things, but this is so heavy on people like boulders, and it just weighs them down. So to take those weights off would be my magic wand.
Okay. Thank you for that. You mentioned in your answer about the behavior of people blaming themselves. If you see that as a, let's say, an ongoing behavior that they're exhibiting, what approach do you take to that?
It varies. It can be an email, it can be talking. It sometimes I've screamed. I've like sometimes you have to scream because some people can be so sick and so unhealthy because of such trauma, and they're just not hearing it. And sometimes you just have to like snap and like scream so they almost hear something different than what's going on in their own head. So it really varies. It's a very it can be a verse, something from a book. It could be a song, trying to have them see and hear and understand something different than their own blame. But it's very difficult. In my experience, I see people that can logically understand something, but they don't really understand it in their being. It's one thing to understand it logically, but they have to understand it in their being, and that's part of the challenge of counseling. But that's one of the gifts too, because if you're able to do that, you can really see a difference in their life.
Have you got anything, case studies or examples that you're proud of in terms of going from something which is quite distressing to what you might perceive as a recovery?
Yeah, and as of now, I haven't interacted with people who have killed themselves, so I'm very thankful that they're still here and still pushing through. One example comes to my mind of a woman who went on a date with a guy, said she didn't want to have sex. He raped her, and she was just, and I had no idea. She was just hurting and suffering and was just so drunk one night, just like multiple times, but like just really. And then she just broke down crying to me and not knowing, not disclosing, just crying. And I hugged her, I prayed with her. She was thankful. And, 2 years later, she's great. I mean, it's actually not affecting her in any way right now, and that's awesome. But every day is a different day. There are many people who, yeah, they were, people who they've handed me the knives. I mean, they're cutting themselves, and they're not cutting themselves anymore. So I find that to be immensely successful, and it's special to do that. It's very difficult, but it's special. And there's so many people. So if anyone's hearing this, if they've interacted with me or not me, just anyone out there that have talked to someone or not talked to someone, just knowing that they can get there, they can find growth and healing for themselves and how that means for themselves. And I can't say what that means for everyone, but just know that it's possible, that it's out there and you can have it.
You're doing great work, so what you're doing is really meaningful, so well done. I don't know why, but the your answer, giving me a specific example of an instance, makes me think about the potential for prevention. So,
Mhm, mhm.
is there a common theme among the examples that you get, whether it might be alcohol or yeah, it might be someone being exposed to a person they shouldn't be, anything like that, where it is so common that it's almost, it's not spoken about, so it would be useful for people to know.
Mm. In my experience, alcohol actually doesn't play this massive role in sexual violence, as much as maybe some people might think, or as much as some people might teach. It's just not in what I see. I see people being abused. The overwhelming majority of people are actually sexually violated by someone they know. If you look at children who are being abused, it can be family members, friends of family members, someone that has access to them and they can seek them out. Part of a guy I know, his one of his biggest things was trying to show and teach the way, like how the grooming process can happen. But there are also people who I think can seek people out. They can see a traumatized person. They can see that they can exert their power and control over them. They can see them and they take them. They can date them. They actually, some of them marry them and they keep them as someone that can do whatever they want to. And so it's like they knew that before. So It's difficult to prevent, but there are some things we can prevent, and there are some things that we can look for. And one of them would be, for example, an adult trying to isolate a kid. Why is someone trying to isolate that child? Why are they taking them away from the party or the camp or wherever it might be? And also, when you see people again with marriages, relationships, check in with people. Like, how are you doing? Are you okay? You seem a little down right now. What's going on? Doesn't mean they'll disclose a sexual assault, but they might in time if they value and build trust with you. And in doing so, you might prevent some things because maybe you're helping someone get down a path, going down a path of healing, increasing their self-esteem, increasing their self-worth, and maybe they don't get involved in that horrific relationship or marriage.
You mentioned about the process of grooming. What can a person who has, I don't know, maybe they're thinking that someone is trying to do that to them, what can they look out for as a red flag as someone who's trying to do that?
Well, I said earlier about listening. So adults, I would argue that all adults we should all agree that we should protect children. It's such a difficult topic to talk about. This is actually the least reported violent crime. And so it's even harder for kids. So, but if a kid makes a comment or says something, listen to it, and then you might have to maybe tell other adults and possibly get, social services involved if you believe and have enough evidence to believe that child is being abused. So sometimes it could just be if a kid says something weird that it was just so off base or just something that gives you this idea that they could be being hurt. I think it's always worth investigating to the best of your abilities as an adult. And it might show that there's nothing happening. And okay, but at least you did. I use the example of grooming, of why would some adults be, again, isolating their kids, taking them into an office with closed doors where no one can really see through. Um, I just think it's important for us to be aware. I think it's important for us to just not to be terrified. I don't believe we should live in fear. I don't believe we should just constantly think about, is my kid being abused? I don't believe that's the healthy way to go. But to be aware, to be cognizant, and to listen to our kids and notice, how do we prevent things? Notice them. So often there's such a change in behavior in a person, in a child, in a behavior. What's going on? Could be physical appearance, could be their affect, could be schoolwork, could be job performance for adults. It could be why is someone drinking more or something like that. So checking in with people, being aware, checking in with people, letting them know that you're always there for them, and sometimes it's as simple as that.
Okay, thank you for that. Just coming back to your approach, do you use any exercises for people other than, for example, music and that sort of thing to change
Mhm.
their state or change their mood?
Not often, sometimes, and that's one of the beauties of therapy. I believe I'm not a therapist, and so I think it's highly valuable to have trained, qualified therapists, psychologists, people that do this daily to provide certain exercises for people that can be quite helpful for them. Sometimes I might offer maybe a writing exercise. I have found writing to be very powerful for people, especially if I have workshops with them. If that's part of my workshop, I will just put some music on and let them write. And I've seen people just become overcome with emotion and they just start bawling their eyes out while they're writing, and they still get out, and then they're done. They stop crying and they feel much better. And then we were laughing, like 20 minutes later, and then we were just having fun with each other. So um, that's my personal approach. But if that's not helpful for someone else, that they ideally would find some kind of exercise or a therapist or even maybe a workbook with things that they can try for themselves. It can also be scary too because some of those things can be quite triggering. So it's important that they do it with someone that they trust. They do it even if they're alone doing something at home, that they know they can go somewhere if they are triggered and if it really puts them in a bad spot.
And is the letter, is that to themselves or to their attacker or like kind of like a description?
Could be anything. I know of a woman who just she couldn't accept that she's a good mother. I think she thinks she's just a horrible mother. It's just not true. So I would ask her, what what makes a good mother? What values, what do you think is a good mother? And sometimes having people write about other things that's not about themselves, but then you can connect it back to themselves, and then it might start to click a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I have heard of if something terrible happens, if you write a letter to yourself or to your former self or even maybe your future self, in the sense
Mm.
that, you've done all this work and now you're feeling better, and that's quite a therapeutic process as well.
I've met people that would not, or want to write to their perpetrators. Um, and some have, and that's a huge step if that's something they desire and crave. But even if someone writes a letter to their perpetrator or to someone, it doesn't mean they have to send it to them.
Mm.
So it could be because what's really going to happen anyways, even if you do, they could turn around and laugh at you. I mean, you really don't know. So if it's healthy to write it and get it out, you can keep it for yourself. You can burn it, you can rip it up, but at least you got it out a little bit. And if someone wanted to give it to their perpetrator, that would ultimately be their choice.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wasn't suggesting you write to the
Mm.
person who's done a terrible thing to you, because if they were a good person, they wouldn't have done that in the first place, right?
But some people, it is therapeutic to do so.
Okay. Have you ever had any instances where someone's wanted to confront their attacker?
Yes, I've had people that are still involved with their attacker. I know people that are married to their attacker, and so it's quite a challenge. But in my experience, most people ultimately want them out of their lives. They don't want the memories. They don't want to be, as I said earlier, crippled and controlled. So they really want nothing to do with their perpetrators, and I personally find that to be quite helpful and healthy for them. But yeah, some people do, and some people have been surprised by the perpetrator. They can show up back at their home, and then they contact me because they're just horrified that he would show up at their door.
I mean, not that it's the defining most important thing, but it kind of puts you in an awkward position if someone is still with the person, right? Well, I mean, what approach do you take there? Are you thinking you need to get them away, or again, are you just taking a listening approach there?
It varies depending if they're being attacked, and if they're willing to move out or get out or even divorce. And that's all the more reason to. I've explained this to people before, where it's like sometimes when people open up to me, oftentimes I'm actually the first person they talk to, and that's true with many rape crisis counselors, where they're the first person they ultimately speak to. But it shouldn't just be me and this one person. We can have a team of people, a team of support for people. And so if there is someone who knows they're attacked, if it's a kid, it's in America, we call it a mandated reporting case. So if we know that a child's being abused, we actually are mandated to report it, and they must. We have to do our best to intervene. But if we're talking about adults or someone in a relationship, yeah, I try my best to get them away out of that relationship, completely break communication if possible. And sometimes it's trying to actually get someone out of a marriage, and now you're dealing with a divorce, possibly a house, custody battles, all these kinds of things. And the kids don't know, family don't know, like no one knows what's really going on except the people involved. So
Mm.
again, it just kind of varies. It depends on what it is. So yeah, if someone's being hurt, it's like don't hurt them anymore. Like stop hurting them, right? And if we're even evolved, but it's sad. How many people do we see every day? We have literally no clue what's going on in their life, no clue what's happening in their own homes, no clue what's going on in their minds every day.
Well, you mentioned something previously about noticing and being involved, and I think there's a no from a not from the people involved, but the people who are surrounding them. There is kind of unwillingness to be involved in other people's business, if you like. So if you see a scenario where it has the potential to be that, and someone is umming and ahhing about whether or not they should get involved, what do you say to them, generally speaking?
If they don't want to get involved, is it possible for them to contact someone else to get involved? And I'm not a cop. I said earlier, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a lawyer. So I don't pretend to be, right? I don't like, so we shouldn't speak about things we don't know. We shouldn't speak about things we don't really understand. And so if someone's not equipped or they're just genuinely scared to get involved, uh, maybe there's someone else that will. Maybe it's important to make that call to the police. Maybe it's important to contact a family member because this crime is hidden in secrets. There's so much secrecy with these crimes. And when someone disclosed to me, and if this is affecting an individual, affecting a family, kids, brothers and sisters, whatever it might be, at some point it's going to come out or not, and you continue to be abused for your whole life. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I guess I would say if someone didn't know, I guess I would try my best to be with them, to help them and go with them to contact whoever it is that we'd have to contact and continue to check in with people. It's interesting. I've done work at a high school where they so often of these times, at least many high school cases, there's no evidence. So often there's no evidence in these crimes. It's one of the reasons people don't report it. So often a school might find that they can't convict a person, and this isn't just like only men do this. It's not true. Women and girls commit sexually violent crimes. But if the school or someone says, "Oh, sorry, we can't find, there's just no evidence, and this is what it is," you can still check in with those people in a month, in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year, and just check in. Hey, how you doing? How's school? How you doing? So even if the judicial system, whatever that system might be, doesn't ultimately show the facts, you can still check in with people and still help them. And that like that often is so valuable to them because you're seeing them, you're noticing them, and you're saying, I know this happened back then, but how are you doing? You're still noticing that they exist.
It's a great point because it means that for those people who do want to do something, but they're reluctant, it means that they can it means they don't have to put themselves in harm's way and still sort of have a clear conscience about just not facing the other way and hoping something doesn't happen. So I appreciate that. The question is around how people have said or felt that you've helped them. So, and I know that initially you said that it was about listening to them. But has anyone come back to you and said what was the main thing that helped them that you had done?
Often I don't hear, sometimes some people can't really put these things fully into words that they want to. So sometimes just saying with a tear down their face, or not even a tear, just simply saying the words thank you is like the world, to me. And it means so much to them. And it's that something because they almost can't even begin to explain. And I don't mean this for myself. I mean anyone that's been helpful in these crimes. It's not just, the work I do, but when someone really helps them and can save their life or really impact their life, they're just so grateful, but they might not be able to express it. And that's totally fine. And often I actually never hear of anything. And that's, more than okay. I don't need to hear anything about that. But yeah, sometimes I do. And it was a cool story. I mean, I had a teenage girl who was going through stuff, and a couple of years later, she was dating a boy, and she introduced me to him, and she said, she was like, he got me through like a yucky time. He got me through like kind of that like bad couple of months of my life, and it was as simple as that, and that that meant the world to me. That, and she's totally fine and living a great life with him. So people express themselves in different ways, and it could be a letter. I've received emails, I've received letters, I've received um, someone could just stare at me and cry, and that's it. That's it.
Well, thank you for that. And Yeah, I think the conversation has been very meaningful. So I appreciate your thoughts. Is there anything that I should have asked you about today?
No, thank you. Thank you again for your time. I thank you for this meaningful conversation. I really appreciate it. And yeah, if anyone's out there that needs help, seek it. That, there's help out there. There's someone that will listen to you. And if you are not treated well, if you are not treated the way you deserve to be treated, if you're not treated with love and respect, don't let it keep you isolated, that you find someone else if you open up, but open up to someone that will really treat you well because you deserve it and you're worthy of it.
And if people want to connect with you or follow you, buy the book, where do they go?
They can just Google my name, robertuttaro.com. Check it out if you want. Send me an email if you want. I'm always there. And if not, find someone. You don't have to do this alone, and you're never alone. You're never alone.
Well, thank you for that and for being a great guest today and for the important work that you do.
Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate it.